Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 223 based on novel. So let's start. The voice of that battle axe god traveled over, and he sounded slightly bleak. He stood on the sacrificial altar and spoke loudly, his voice traveling far and wide. He muttered to himself, "I should have died long ago. I should have died in the disaster 20,000 years ago. I should have died with my comrades on the battlefield. I shouldn't have laid dormant. I shouldn't have turned into a stone statue in great ruins. I shouldn't have struggled on whilst at death's door until now, to protect some bullshit hope, some bullshit future." Qin Mu and Granny Sai were stunned. They looked at the god on the sacrificial altar, and even though they wanted to save him, they were helpless. That god knelt down with one knee and sat down. He wielded his battle axe to defend against this blood sacrifice. His voice became solemn. "Hope, future, carefree village. We have been silent for too long, founding emperor. We have been so silent that we have lost our fighting spirit, so silent that the stone statues are frozen, so silent that the people we had to protect back then has already all died. I already can't see any familiar face, so silent that these mountains had also changed. What about you?" His voice suddenly became loud and he reprimanded the sky with a deafening voice. "Founding Emperor, what about you? Where are you? The ideal world in your heart is that carefree village you are turtling in. Could you bear to see your subordinates, the old soldiers that followed you wither and die one by one? Can you bear to see the mountains and rivers shift, to see the people that you protect die from old age? Why didn't you appear? 20,000 years, have you still not walk out from defeat? Have you not pick up your confidence up? Do you still not bear to walk out of carefree village? We are waiting for your summon, to fight that celestial heavens once again. Where are you?" Qin Mu and Granny Sai heard his voice reverberating among heaven and earth. There was no one in Luofu heaven who could reply to his reproach. "My goose wing, dispel with me." On top of the high sacrificial altar, in the intense blood-colored light, that god tried his best to execute his spirit weapon, and in that moment, incomparably intense light burst forth from the peak of the sacrificial altar. The light was so dazzling that it made it difficult for one to open their eyes. Without founding emperor, protection still exists. I, former subordinate of founding emperor, heavenly emperor star, Alcade division soldier Luo Yu, shall use this broken body to protect our people, to prevent you from descending. Weapon dispel. Spirit dispel. Rays burst out, and a world-shaking rumble traveled out. Terrifying pulses instantly poured out in all directions of the sacrificial altar, and Granny Sai immediately opened up great overarching heavenly stars force field to protect herself and Qin Mu. The boundless waves drowned them out. Intense rings of light swept across great overarching heavenly stars force field, and the ground churned like charred biscuits. As the rings of light shattered, a broken planet in the sky shifted over and raised huge overflowing waves. Yet the huge waves that stood between heaven and earth was also stopped by this explosion. Next, the waves moved back and the water spread out. This explosion was extremely short, and not long later, the surroundings of the sacrificial altar regained peace. The blood river that shrouded the top of the sacrificial altar no longer existed. On the sacrificial altar, the god and his battle axe were erased and the broken sacrificial altar emanated blood color. That god had already dispelled his weapon and his primordial spirit, using the power of his sacrifice to stop the sacrificial rite, making that ancient being that the devil god wanted to summon be unable to descend. Qin Mu looked at sacrificial altar that was dyed blood red, and he didn't move even after a while. Granny Sai couldn't resist saying, "Mua, let's go." He chose to free himself, and this is a good thing to him. After all, he fulfilled his promise and completed his world. Let us head for the next sacrificial altar, hopefully, we can meet Saint Woodcutter. Chinmu followed her, and he didn't say anything. Granny Sai was slightly unused to him being like this, so she turned around and asked with a smile, Mua, what are you thinking? This isn't like you. I'm thinking, maybe my ancestor, that founding emperor, he might not be the great hero I'm imagining him to be. Qin was in a daze and he said, after I knew I'm from Carefree Village, after I knew I was the descendant of founding emperor, I always have a thought, and that was to become an indomitable hero like founding emperor. A great hero. He had supreme ideals and there were countless heroic figures following after him. He was definitely amiable and venerable. Yet, he shook his head and remained silent for a moment. Maybe he's not that kind of person. Maybe he's just an old man that's afraid of death. He doesn't have that kind of courage, that kind of breadth of mind. He only hides in Carefree Village to live his own drunken dream. Maybe he has let down countless heroes that had followed him. Granny Sai blinked her eyes and burst out into laughter. Mua, you are still a child, why are you thinking so much for? When I was your age, Enli Qianxing has already taken a liking to me, and I was thinking about how to get rid of him. When village chief was your age, he was still playing in mud. Chinmu said with a smile, village chief had most likely paid respects to a master, and was being groomed as the next human emperor. How could he still be playing in mud? Granny, you're joking again. Granny Sai saw him smiling and she smiled. You are the child I've raised, and even though I didn't treat you well when you peed your bed, and didn't want to raise you, I'm always worried you will leave me after you grow up, to leave the village. I keep thinking if you are well or not, always worrying that you will suffer. Maybe this is the mindset of a parent. I don't want you to grow up so fast and to have so many troubles, you should be carefree. It's all village chief that old fart's fault, making you a human emperor for what? After going back, old woman I is going to pour black dog's blood all over his stone statue. Coming to the surroundings of the second altar, looking from afar, there was a devil god attacking this altar and trying to take over the control. The two gods fought fiercely and the sight was astonishing. Ain't Furillio afraid that Saint Woodcutter become ruthless and just sacrifice Luofu heaven? Chinmu shook his head. Granny Sai put down her small flower basket and took out a pair of scissors from the basket. She took out a few cloth strips and her fingers moved up and down as she threaded the line to weave a tattered shirt. She said with a smile, Furillio is preparing some tokens for negotiation. The more sacrificial altars he takes down, the more advantage he will have in negotiation. Up. The tattered shirt she just weaved flew up and flew into the battlefield. That shirt pounced and automatically wore itself on the devil god's body. That devil god was fighting the god of great ruins, who was guarding that sacrificial altar, and even though he could see and hear in all directions, his enemy was simply too strong, thus he had no choice but to put in complete focus. When this shirt came flying over, he didn't felt any threat from it, thus he didn't put up his guard. When the shirt was cloaked onto his body, only then did he react, but it was already too late. Once this shirt of Granny Sai was on, it rapidly shrunk, and binding his chest, and causing his chest to contract rapidly. His ribs also snapped one by one. This shirt seemed to have been covered with needles that stabbed into his body, and a sharp pain traveled over, making him unable to bear it. That devil god couldn't catch his breath, so he hurriedly shrunk his body. As a devil god, controlling the size of their body was naturally very simple. Right at this moment, his opponent swept over with a sword and he managed to coincidentally avoided this sword as he was shrinking his body. However, as he shrunk, that shirt also shrunk, but it still bound him tightly. Just break. His body expanded, but that shirt didn't expand along with him. That devil god instantly heard the sounds of his ribs breaking. Not only did his ribs break, but his 5 viscera and 6 bowels were also all squashed at nearly the same time. His chest was bound into the thickness of a thumb, and there were silver needles everywhere in the shirt, covering his entire body. They destroyed his bodily functions, and when he expanded his body under such a situation, he was truly seeking death. That god that was fighting with him stabbed his sword through his head. In that instant his body expanded, nailing his primordial spirit to death. That devil god stared with his eyes wide open, and blood poured out from his mouth. He rasped, "If I wasn't wearing this small shirt, you wouldn't have defeated me." After he said so, he took his last breath. That shirt automatically came off from his corpse and returned to Granny Sai's side. The shirt automatically disassembled into cloth strips, and returned back into the basket. Qin Mu looked at the cloth strips in the basket, and he probed. Granny Sai's skill in tailoring is becoming more and more outstanding. Where are these cloth strips from? Why are they able to bind a devil god's corporeal body? The cloth strips are weaved from the tendons of gods, and there are also a few tendons of dragons. I found them in great ruins. Because there's too little, I can only weave them into cloth strips. Granny Sai said with a smile, "The crux is still great educational heavenly devil scriptures, which is able to sew these tattered cloth strips together, and made the devil god unable to break free." Qin Mu blinked his eyes. "Other than a shirt, what else can Granny make?" "I can still make 2 small shoes. I still have some strong cloth soles made from the skin of a devil god. It's more than enough to make 2 pairs of cloth shoes." Granny Sai took out 2 pairs of soles, and she blinked her eyes while smiling. "Once one wears my small shoes, I can definitely make him neither live nor die. He will be unable to take them off no matter what." "Does Mua wants to wear the small shoes Granny make?" "I don't. You have made me wear too many small shoes when I was little, and now my feet are all squeezed small." As they talked, that god from great ruins that was guarding the altar invited them. "May 2 Dao friends come up to gather." Qin Mu and Granny Sai scaled up the altar. That god was like a jade tree in the wind and looked very handsome. When he saw Granny Sai's appearance, his Dao heart was slightly shaken, and he hurriedly stabilized his spirit. He bowed to express his gratitude. "So it's Cult Master Qin. Is this a Dao friend from Supreme Emperor Heaven? Thank you for your assistance. Senior recognizes me." Qin Mu was astonished. That god said with a smile, "Heavenly Teacher has talked about Cult Master once." Qin Mu hurriedly asked, "Where's Heavenly Teacher?" "Over there." That god raised his finger to point into the distance. "From here on, the 6th sacrificial altar is where Heavenly Teacher is guarding. I need to stay here and guard the sacrificial altar here, so I can't escort the both of you, pardon me." Qin Mu and Granny Sai bade farewell and walked towards the direction he had pointed. On the journey, they saw other sacrificial altars also being attacked. It was either the devil army pouring towards the sacrificial altar like a flood, or it was devil god fighting the god alone, struggling over the power to control the altar. Qin Mu and Granny Sai would help if they could, and if they couldn't, they would take a detour. A sacrificial altar had already fallen into the hands of the devil race, and the god on top should have been killed. This was something that couldn't be prevented. Saint Woodcutter has grabbed hold of what the devil race cherishes the most and used Luofu heaven as a threat. The devil race had no choice but to pit their lives and seize back some capital for negotiation. Luofu heaven is so dangerous, yet there are actually still devils dwelling here. Qin Mu and Granny Sai saw the bones and corpses of numerous devil gods being erected in some restricted areas. Over there were stone tablets of various elevation, and on the stone tablets, devil writings were engraved. They should be used for defending against the natural disasters here. Furthermore, the devils were living in the divine treasures of these devil gods' corpses. It seemed that after the natural disaster happened, some devil gods have offered out their bodies to let their clansmen survive. Granny Sai, Why does this devil world have natural disasters? Where are these natural disasters coming from? Chinmu was puzzled and he raised his head to look at the broken planet in the sky. The planet was extremely huge and was currently moving. It raised even more natural disasters and invoked the earth, water, wind, and fire. There were still shattered pieces of stars in the sky and they descended down like fire snakes, crashing somewhere. Granny Sai shook her head. How would I know? Maybe this place is a true natural disaster, or maybe some god had used great magic power to move these planets over, using them to descend disasters down. As for what the exact reason is, maybe only existence like Furillio could know. Finally, they came to the sixth sacrificial altar. Qinmu and Granny Sai looked from afar, and saw the devil Qi on that sacrificial altar was separated into black and white. They swirled around each other in the sky above, just like two huge fishes slowly swimming with their heads connected to each other's tails. Furillio has arrived. Qinmu's heart was astonished. I wonder if Lu Li is here. If Lu Li is here, Saint Woodcutter will be in danger. He looked up the sacrificial altar, and he could see numerous different divine treasures. But other than Saint Woodcutter and Furillio's divine treasures, he didn't see any more divine treasures that had already stepped into the celestial palaces, or devil god palaces. Lu Li wasn't among those that followed Furillio up the sacrificial altar. Instead, there were some disciples that had yet to cultivate to devil gods, so they weren't of much threat. Contrariwise, there were a few divine treasures of devil god below the sacrificial altar. Furillio must have also been afraid that Saint Woodcutter would suddenly become ruthless and just sacrifice Luofu heaven, thus he left the devil gods that had followed him at the bottom of the altar. Chinmu put his heart at ease and followed Granny Sai to walk towards the sixth sacrificial altar. When they came to the bottom of the sacrificial altar, Chinmu saw the black tiger god, and he couldn't help becoming delighted. He waved his hand at him. The black tiger god paid him no attention, and wielded his two hammers in his hands. He looked nervously at those two devil gods on the other side. Saint Woodcutter's voice rang out. Qinmu, gods are not allowed to step foot on the altar, that woman beside you can remain below, you can come up. Qinmu acknowledged. Granny Sai couldn't resist saying, Sacred Teacher, I'm the previous saintess of Heavenly Saint cult. I admire Sacred Teacher very much. May I beg Sacred Teacher, let me take a look at you. On the sacrificial altar, Saint Woodcutter popped his head out and looked down. He couldn't help becoming slightly stunned and he said slowly, What a woman, almost messing up my Tao heart. Heavenly Saint cult has no relations to me, you have also taken a look at me so don't come up, otherwise, the frame of mind will be unstable. Granny Sai could only acknowledge and remained beside the black tiger god. She instructed with a low voice, Mua, after you go up, don't execute Overlord Body 3 elixir technique. If you have to, you need to paste this golden willow leaf on the heart of your brows. Granny, don't worry, I will. Chinmu walked up the steps with wide steps and finally came up to the top of the sacrificial altar not long later. He saw Furillio and Saint Woodcutter each sitting high up in their seats, and below Furillio were a few youths. Jawali was among them, and that young master Qi Jui from the celestial heavens was also there. However, Qi Jui had his own seat, which showed that his status dictated that he had the rights to take a seat. Qinmu walked forward and bowed to Saint Woodcutter. He then greeted Furillio, and Furillio sat them motionlessly, gently nodding his head as a return of greeting. Qinmu then greeted Qi Jui and Jawali. The two of them returned the greeting and didn't have a hint of arrogance just because Qinmu was their opponent. Qinmu came to the bottom of Saint Woodcutter and stood there. Furillio looked at him curiously, and saw the white ribbon covering Qinmu's eyes, yet there was a vertical eye that was on the heart of his brows, which allowed him to see. He said with a smile, Little friend Qin, the eye in the heart of your brows sure is strange. The eye in the heart of Qin Mu's brows hung down, and he didn't look at him. Furillio laughed and said, "Why don't you dare to look at me? Could you be scared of me? You are still young, newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. If you have fear for me, I worry for your future cultivation and Dao heart. Come, raise your head and take a look at me." Qin Mu disregarded his words. Qi Jui and Zhehuali were also examining Qin Mu. They were also puzzled and didn't know why Qin Mu would cover up his eyes. Furthermore, they were very curious about the third eye in the heart of his brows. Saint Woodcutter looked at Qin Mu, and he only saw him hanging his head down in slight dejection. He said with a smile, "Qin Mu, why have you come to find me? Why have you covered up your eyes?" "Oh, I know, you have crossed gazes with Furillio again." Qin Mu nodded his head, and he was ashamed. "Disciple and the few elders in my family laid a diversion, and stopped senior Furillio's army of 1,000,000, thus I got harmed by Furillio again. When I cross-gaze with him, he had placed another divine art in my eyes. If I look into the mirror, I would be taken away by him. I don't know how to solve this kind of divine art, thus I've come to find teacher." Saint Woodcutter said with a smile, "Furillio is your senior, he's joking with you. He's right here, so why does he need to play these little tricks to take you away? Undo your silk ribbon, let me see how he kidnap you." Qin Mu undid the silk ribbon and revealed his eyes. Saint Woodcutter said with a smile, "Look in the mirror, see if he can seize you." Qin Mu took out the mirror and take a look. Furillio's figure appeared once more and became larger and larger as he walked out from the mirror. Qin Mu's hands trembled as he couldn't bear the weight of the mirror. Furillio in the mirror was actually the Furillio in his own eyes. He was about to devour him like a nightmare. Suddenly, Saint Woodcutter swung the axe he used to chop firewood and chopped onto the mirror Qin Mu was holding. On the other side, Furillio grunted and a bloody mark suddenly appeared on the heart of his brows. Qin Mu felt like he was released from a burden and the pressure vanished completely. Saint Woodcutter pulled back his axe and said with a smile, "I told you Furillio is joking with you, he is your senior, how could he lay his hands on you? Won't he be worried that I get angered and chop his disciples to death?" A trail of blood flowed down from the heart of Furillio's brows, separating apart, when it reached his nose bridge. His 3 faces all revealed looks of anger. "Old friend, you should know if you continue to guard Luofu heaven, you might not die, but your 24 Dao friends will be unable to escape death." He turned to another face and said solemnly, "It's not our devil race that wants to wipe you out, the one that truly wants to wipe you guys out is someone else. With your wisdom, you should know how powerful he is, so why aren't you letting them send themselves to death? They are like me, a person who should be long dead, we should have died in the battlefield 20,000 years ago, we are only forced to live until now by the situation." Saint Woodcutter placed his axe aside and he sighed ruefully. "Furillio, do you know? If it was during founding emperor era, a small devil god jumping around like you would have long been sent up to god execution stage to be executed, now is not like the past. I admire you very much, and I also know your abilities and methods. When you always didn't invite people of the celestial heavens forward and relied on your own strength to attack Supreme Emperor Heaven, I knew you didn't want to be under someone's rule. You have your own ambition and magnificent aspiration. You want to use Supreme Emperor Heaven as a springboard to jump to founding Emperor Celestial Heavens. Your ambition is very big." Furillio gave a slight smile. "How can a man not have any ambition in this world? If one doesn't have any, what's the difference between them and a dried fish?" Saint Woodcutter shook his head. "Have you ever thought of what happens if you take over founding Emperor Celestial Heavens? Will you be wiped out? To put away the bow once the birds are gone, to boil the hound once it caught the rabbit, you should understand that, right? When you attack until great ruins, the moment you wipe out eternal peace, is also the end of you and your clansmen. The disaster of your clan being wiped out is merely inches away. With Furillio as your name, the wise sage of the devil race, you wouldn't not understand it, am I right? Furillio's neck turned and he changed to his face on the right. He said leisurely, Saint is skilled in attacking the heart. You may be looked like you are thinking for me, but it's actually the method of attacking the heart. The logic you had said, I understand, but I also know I need to find a path of survival for my people. As for whether the celestial heavens will wipe me out or not, it is still a possibility. At most I will stoop down to become a dog, the celestial heavens won't stoop so low to kill a dog, right? His left face smiled and said, a man living in this world needs to be flexible. Dao brother, if you are still insistent of using Luofu heaven to threaten me, I don't need to kill you, there will naturally be someone who will kill you. Dao brother, what's the harm in you being flexible? Saint Woodcutter shook his head and said, if I want to be a dog, I could have done so 20,000 years ago. If I can stand and live, I rather stand. Furillio's gaze wavered, but after more people die, you will still end up lying down like a dead dog. Saint Woodcutter smiled and said, I'm not afraid of being broken in two pieces, I'm willing to die even more miserably. Don't worry, I won't die lying on the ground. The terms you proposed for me to let out part of eternal peace's territory to your devil race. Now Qin Mu is here, I can tell you. His expression suddenly turned cold. As long as we are alive, founding Emperor's land, we will never give up an inch of land. Stretch your leg in and I'll chop it off, stretch your head in and I'll chop it off. If your devil race dares to enter eternal peace, I will wipe out your devil race. He said coldly, founding Emperor's land, you can forget about it. Furillio heard what he said and his three faces also instantly turned solemn. He said coldly, that means we have no negotiation. In that case, let us sign the Pact of Earth Count. He raised his brush and rapidly wrote the words in the oath. He gently raised his hands and the paper flew towards Saint Woodcutter. Saint Woodcutter also wrote down his oath and exchanged paper with him. The two of them examined each other's oath and they checked whether there were flaws. They then used their brushes to change some terms and exchanged the oaths back to check again. They examined it carefully once more and fixed parts they couldn't accept. In this way over and over again, they finally agreed on each other's oaths. The two of them stood up and they said their oaths. Furillio used the devil language, while Saint Woodcutter used the god language. Both languages rang out at the same time, and the two languages carried different profound theory and marvel. They even attacked each other. Qin Mu was skilled in both types of languages, so no matter if it was the devil language or god language, he understood both and subconsciously fell into a trance. The space suddenly vibrated, and this mountain under their feet also shook continuously. Everyone on the sacrificial altar hurriedly stabilized their footing. Under the sacrificial altar, Granny Sai and the Black Tiger God were facing the other two devil gods, and the ground under their feet also automatically floated up. The four gods stabilized themselves to prevent them from being taken advantage of. Granny Sai swayed left and right. Her cultivation seemed to be lacking as she fell back several steps. An embroidered shoes fell off in an accident, so she could only stabilize herself with a bare foot. The eyes of that devil god that was facing off her light up and didn't allow her to react. He stretched his hand to pick up that embroidered shoe, and with the shoe in his hand, that devil god stared at Granny Sai's white feet. He chuckled and placed the shoe under his nose to take a sniff. Granny Sai was furious and stretched her hand out with a smile that was yet not a smile. Return my shoe to me. That devil god chuckled and placed the shoe into his chest. I take pity on little beauty. Your shoe, I'll keep it. Granny Sai was furious. She took out the other shoe and threw it at him. You are a devil god after all, an existence that's high above, how can you be so frivolous? That devil god raised his other hand to catch the shoe and he stared at her pair of white feet. He chuckled and said, nice. Now I've got a pair. Little beauty is truly born so delicately. I also have some concubines of the human race. If you listen to me, I can make you my primary wife. I will go back home and eat that faded old woman of mine. Granny Side chuckled and said, if you eat your faded old woman, I still need to worry when I will become a faded old woman and wait for you to eat me. You can't wear my small shoes too, so you can take them. The black tiger god frowned and thought to himself, where is this woman from? Her words are incoherent and she started to flirt with this devil god. She's really a person that's unreliable like junior brother Qin. The surroundings were shrouded by thick darkness and suddenly, lights from flame traveled out from the darkness, as a pair of huge sharp horns gradually rose from the darkness below the sacrificial altar. The surroundings of the sacrificial altar were as dark as night. The 9 bends and 18 curves of that pair of sharp horns were as tall as clouds, and far surpassed the sacrificial altar. The black tiger god's heart was greatly startled, and his hammers accidentally fell from his hands. He hurriedly picked them up and raised his head to look at this pair of sharp horns that was continuously rising from the darkness. After a moment, the apparition of Earth Count only revealed its head, and the 2 sharp horns had already pierced to a height that was on par with the planets in outer space. That fierce tiger face of Earth Count was hidden in the darkness, and the flames in his eyes made his face glowed from time to time. The huge and magnificent sacrificial altar was also lit up from time to time under his gaze. Earth Count was waiting quietly for them to read out their oaths. This was the apparition of Earth Count, and not really Earth Count. It was his power being projected onto this world to witness these 2 strong practitioners making a pact. Earth Count couldn't descend personally, as his corporeal body was simply too vast. If he descended, this weak world also wouldn't be able to handle it. Chinmu became excited and waved his hand vigorously at the apparition of Earth Count. Earth Count's expression was solemn and paid no attention to him. Chinmu continued to wave excitedly and he shouted, me. It's me. Earth Count, we have met before. I'm Qin Fengqing, you even sealed me. Earth Count continued to pay no attention to him. Chinmu continued to wave excitedly. The corners of Earth Count's eyes trembled. Be dignified. Don't take to me, I'm handling business. Zhehuali and Qijui looked at each other in dismay and felt an astonishment in his heart. Furillio and Saint Woodcutter finished reading the oath and signed the pact of Earth Count. That majestic Earth Count's head took a look at Qin Mu, who was waiting excitedly to talk to him. Qijui hesitated for a moment, and he walked over to greet Earth Count. Earth Count paid no attention to him and said to Qin Mu, don't create trouble. After saying so, he gradually sank into the darkness, and slowly disappeared, leaving Qin Mu and Qijui on the sacrificial altar. When his sharp horns completely sank into the ground, the darkness also scattered and the surroundings regained brightness. Saint Woodcutter stared at Qin Mu. Furillio also stared at Qin Mu. Qijui and Zhehuali's gazes also fell onto Qin Mu. Earth Count always had the solemn and dignified image of controlling life and death. He never chit-chat, and every time there were strong practitioners making an oath, his power would be projected over as a witness, and that kind of aura was dark and terrifying, making people unable to breathe. And this time, not only did the apparition of Earth Count talked, he even seemed very familiar with Qin Mu. This couldn't help make people suspect if Earth Count would be impartial when making a pact to him. The reason why Earth Count had become the figure of making a pact was because he didn't have any selfishness. If he did, that would be very terrifying. I couldn't see that little friend Qin and Earth Count's relationship was so good, Furillio said while beaming with a smile. Qin Mu closed all 3 eyes and didn't look at him. He grunted and said, If our relationship was so good, he wouldn't have sealed me. Furillio put his heart down, and he suddenly thought of that jade pendant of Qin Mu. He felt frightened in his heart. That jade pendant is Earth Count's seal. I've suppressed the seal that day, which was why I released that devil king. He felt enlightened, and the rock on his heart was finally placed on the ground. Earth Counts personally sealed him, so it seems like he can forget about breaking free from the seal. Now, I can be at ease when dealing with him. It's just that this brat don't dare to look at me anymore. At this moment, a miserable scream came from the below, and everyone on the altar were astonished. They hurriedly came to the border to take a look down. They saw a devil god hugging his legs and rolling around in pain. On the feet of that devil god was a pair of delicately embroidered shoes. The shoes were only 3 inches, and they were filled with needles which pricked the feet of the devil god and turned them bloody. The body of the devil god was sometimes small and sometimes big as he tried to break free of the shoes, but they only shrunk and didn't become bigger. At this moment, the bones in both of his feet were completely shattered and the pain was indescribable. On the side, the black tiger god and the other devil god looked at Granny Sai in fear. They didn't dare to get closer. Both the bones in your feet are completely broken. Granny Sai spoke cheerfully and advised him with a gentle and soft voice, sever them. When the embroidery needles swim all the way to your heart and lungs, or even to your brain, that will be too late. That devil god trembled from the pain and he gritted his teeth. He hissed, "You trick me into wearing your small shoes." Granny Sai said in astonishment, "You wanted to wear them yourself, when have I ever lied to you?" On the sacrificial altar, Furillio raised his eyebrows and sneered at Saint Woodcutter. "This is another one of your disciple. She's the same as Dao brother, injuring people with a stab in the back." Saint Woodcutter was also slightly astonished and he shook his head. "Not consider my disciple. But her wits is comparable to mine." Furillio snorted and his voice reached the bottom of the altar. "Mutuluo, your divine art isn't exquisite enough, you can't suppress her needles. The longer you delay, the more your life will be in danger. Chop off your 2 legs." That devil god was currently trying his best to suppress the embroidery needles that were flowing into his blood vessels from the embroidered shoes. They were so thin that they were hard to detect, yet they were as nimble as fine swords, tunneling into his blood vessels. He used his vital chi and transformed them into different divine arts to block the needles off. But because it was his own body, he couldn't execute any powerful divine art, so he couldn't block these needles. He heard Furillio's words and gave a shout. With tears flowing down his cheeks, he wiped his tears to chop down, removing both of his calves. Where his legs were severed, numerous fine silver needles came flowing out like water. The forging method of heavenly works god race. Furillio saw the forging method of founding emperor's heavenly works god race, and his heart was astonished. He suddenly remembered that old blacksmith beside Qin Mu. Granny Sai's silver needles must be from that old blacksmith. A blacksmith, a tailor, a painter, an apothecary. What kind of people are hanging around this Qin Mu? Furillio also couldn't help feeling his head aching. This video will end here.